And joining me now to discuss the report and the implications is climate change expert Shweta Chakraborty. She is a risk and behavioral scientist. We thank you so much for joining us again. The U.S. needs more than 50,000 miles of new seawall and estimated staggering cost of nearly $420 million. How do states and communities even begin to think about how to fund the projects?
Right. If you think about this exorbitant cost that needs to be proactively done now before we actually start seeing some of these impacts that we're hoping to prevent against, it's not that much compared to what we've been experiencing in terms of relief and recovery post a lot of these disasters in the last few years. So an example of this is Hurricane Sandy in New York City. It cost $71 billion to recover from that disaster. That was a hurricane category 2. And that was because of a few inches of additional sea level rise. The combination of that resulted in an additional 25 square miles of land affected and 40,000 people that wouldn't have been affected that were affected. So if we don't proactively begin to adapt and put in the money now, which is a mere $17 billion compared to what the relief and recovery has already shown to be and will be in the future, it's going to cost us a lot more. So we really need to do this now.
All right, so let's talk about the report very quickly. We just want to show everybody at home what's at stake and the costs here. Florida actually faces the highest costs here, $76 billion by 2040. Louisiana comes in second at $38 billion, North Carolina third at $35 billion, and then cities, Jacksonville, New York, Virginia Beach, they could wind up spending the most here. So is it possible, though, for all of these cities to actually save their shorelines? Again, looking at what really are staggering costs. I know you said that post-Hurricane Sandy, a lot of these cities had no choice. A lot of the coastal areas had no choice but to put money into infrastructure. But that's to combat the current threat, not to combat what we face down the road.
Right, exactly. And so we need to be really strategic in thinking about the money we're putting in now to build up our defenses, our coastal defenses, and also are we doing everything that we need to adapt to these impacts of climate change? We're talking about increasing pumps, levees, gates, everything is part of a proactive strategy that we need to think very carefully about now funding. So an example of this that we want to make sure we avoid, we want to learn from past mistakes. An example is the Netherlands. The Netherlands coastal defense system back in the 1980s was the creation of something very similar to what is being proposed in this report. And it's referred to as the Rotterdam Gates. And it was a engineering marvel. And it was protecting the city from inundation, from sea level rise, from storm surges, and from seawater inundation. They put in $1 billion back in the 80s because they anticipated the amount of sea level rise was going to be a certain amount and that would be enough to protect the city. But ultimately, they realize now that that projection was inadequate, and $1 billion more or less now is wasted because of it. So are we sure that we are accurately predicting what we are coming up against? Is 3 feet really going to be what we are going to be experiencing by the end of the century? What if it's more? There's a good amount of research that shows that the IPCC report is actually probably underestimating what we're going to be coming across by the end of the century. So if we're going to put in billions of dollars, we better make sure that it is adequate investments now to prevent against the worst cases of sea level rise by the end of the century, and it could be up to 30 feet.
Shweta Chakraborty, we thank you so much once again for your time. It's great to see you.